A single human could not stand, but the princess made it possible. The sunlight reflected off its shimmering surfaces, scattering beams of light that danced across the barren landscape below. The aliens had built the Skyspire centuries ago, a monument to their power and endurance, and it had become a proving ground for all who wanted to test their strength. For Kale, it was something different. It was a test of a human's courage, a challenge no one had thought possible. He had heard the whispers of the alien council before arriving. A single human could never survive the climb, they said. Your body will fail, your mind may break. You are weak. Every word had stung, but Kale had learned long ago that humans thrived where brute strength failed. Adaptability, creativity, and courage, these were the qualities that could bend even the most impossible circumstances. He knew that, if he could survive this climb, the world would see humanity in a new light. A soft hum reached his ears as a hovering pod approached. Inside was Princess Arinya, young but commanding, her silver robes fluttering slightly in the artificial breeze of her craft. Her eyes shone with intelligence and curiosity, studying Kale as if she were observing a delicate experiment. She was the ruler of this alien world, known not only for her wisdom, but for her fascination with other species. Humans, in particular, had captured her imagination. They were fragile, yes, but their ingenuity was unmatched. You've come far to stand at this base, she said, her voice calm but firm. The climb is impossible for any human alone, you know that, do you not? Kale nodded. I know, he replied, his voice steady. But humans survive where others cannot. It is not strength alone that matters. I will find a way. Arinya smiled faintly. I admire your courage, but courage alone will not suffice. You will need tools, guidance, and perhaps more than that. She gestured to a series of devices hovering around the pod, drones, grappling hooks, exoskeleton harnesses, and protective suits. These are for you. Use them wisely, but remember, the final steps must be your own. No machine can replace human instinct. Kale studied the devices carefully. Each had been designed with meticulous care, incorporating alien technology far beyond human understanding. Yet, as he ran his hands over the harness, he realized that tools were only part of the solution. The Skyspire's energy winds, its shifting gravity, and the unpredictable radiation would require more than gadgets. They demanded observation, patience, and a keen mind. The princess landed her pod lightly on the ground. I will monitor your progress, she said. You may call on me if needed, but only for advice. The climb is yours. Prove that a human can stand where no one thought possible. Kale took a deep breath and stepped toward the first platform. The air around him crackled faintly, charged with the Skyspire's immense energy. He activated his harness, feeling the subtle vibrations as the exoskeleton calibrated to his movements. A small drone floated beside him, ready to analyze the structure and guide him around weak points. He glanced back at Arinya. Her expression was calm, but he saw the flicker of excitement in her eyes. She believed in him. The first steps were cautious. Kale moved slowly, testing the stability of each platform. The crystal beneath his feet pulsed with light, reacting to the energy coursing through the tower. At times, it felt as though the Skyspire were alive, observing him, testing him, challenging him. Every human instinct urged him to stop, to retreat, but he pressed forward. Hours passed. The climb was not easy. The energy winds buffeted him, threatening to throw him off balance. The radiation from the tower made the air shimmer and burned faintly against his skin. His muscles ached, and his lungs burned with each exertion. Yet with each challenge, he found a way. He adjusted the harness, repositioned the drone, and shifted his weight in ways that no alien climber would consider. Humans were small, fragile, and light, and that gave him an unexpected advantage. He could slip through gaps, pivot on narrow ledges, and use the Skyspire's energy currents to propel himself upward. Princess Arinya watched from a distance, communicating through a subtle link in his harness. The energy pulse is rising, she warned. Move carefully, observe before reacting. Kale paused on a narrow ledge, the crystal beneath him glowing bright blue. He could feel the pulse building, almost like a heartbeat. He studied the patterns, noticing the subtle shifts in color and intensity. Slowly, deliberately, he synchronized his steps with the pulse, letting the tower's energy guide his movements rather than fighting it. It was risky, but it worked. He felt the current lift him slightly, easing the strain on his legs. By evening, Kale had reached the first major checkpoint. The aliens below looked up in awe, whispering among themselves. "How does he survive?" one muttered. "It is impossible," said another. Kale took a moment to rest, sitting on a narrow platform and gazing at the vast expanse below. The alien cities looked tiny from this height, their spires and towers dwarfed by the crystal giant above him. He thought of Earth, of the humans he had left behind. They would never believe this climb was possible, yet here he was, proof that human determination could surpass expectation. Princess Arinya hovered beside him briefly. "You have done well," she said. "But the real challenge is yet to come. The Skyspire will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. Trust yourself. Humans have a unique strength, the ability to adapt." Kale nodded, feeling both exhausted and invigorated. He knew that the climb was far from over. The higher he went, the stronger the energy pulses became, and the challenges would grow. But for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, a single human could stand at the summit. Night fell, and the Skyspire began to glow with an ethereal light. Kale activated a temporary shelter device, a small dome of energy that protected him from the harsher elements. As he rested, he reviewed his tools, recalibrated the drones, and studied the crystal formations ahead. Every detail mattered. Every observation could make the difference between success and failure. Sleep was uneasy. The energy of the tower whispered in his mind, almost as if it were alive. Shadows moved across the crystal walls, flickering in strange patterns. Kale dreamed of falling, of being consumed by the Skyspire's energy, but he awoke each time with renewed determination. Humans were not made to submit to fear. They survived because they faced it. Morning came, and Kale resumed his climb. Each step was more challenging than the last, but he found joy in the struggle. He discovered hidden ledges, leveraged energy currents, and anticipated the tower's movements in ways that no alien climber could. Every success was small but significant, a testament to human ingenuity and courage. As the day progressed, Kale reached a section of the tower that seemed impossible, a sheer wall of crystal, smooth and radiant, with energy pulses that threatened to knock him off balance. He paused, studying the wall, the rhythm of the pulses, and the environment around him. Then, slowly, he began to climb, using his mind as much as his body. He let the energy guide his hands, adjusted his movements in harmony with the pulses, and climbed higher than he ever thought possible. By the end of the day, Kale had surpassed every expectation. The aliens below could only watch in astonishment as a human stood where no one believed it could. Princess Arinya's voice came through the harness. "You are doing what many said was impossible. Remember, the climb is not about strength alone. It is about seeing opportunities where others see obstacles. That is the human way." Kale looked up at the summit, barely visible in the shifting light of the tower. It seemed to float distant and untouchable, yet for the first time it felt within reach. The climb had only just begun, but he had already proven something vital, that human courage, creativity, and determination could surpass even the most formidable obstacles. He settled on a small platform to rest, feeling the thrill of progress and the weight of the journey ahead. The Skyspire was vast, but so was human potential. With Princess Arinya's guidance and his own resolve, Kale knew he could continue upward. The summit awaited, and with it, the chance to show the universe that a single human could indeed stand where no one believed possible. As night fell once more, Kale gazed at the glowing tower above him, the stars reflected in the crystal walls. He closed his eyes briefly, not in fear, but in focus. Tomorrow, the climb would continue, and humanity's story would grow ever brighter. The morning sun struck the Skyspire with a brilliance that made the crystal walls glow like liquid light. Kale adjusted his harness and examined the path ahead. The climb so far had tested every skill he possessed, and he had survived. But he knew the Skyspire was far from done with him. Its energy pulses grew stronger the higher he climbed, and he could feel the tower reacting to his presence, almost as if it recognized his determination and intended to test him further. Princess Arinya hovered nearby in her pod, her eyes scanning every movement. "The next section will be difficult," she said through the communicator embedded in his suit. "The energy pulses are unstable. You will need to think differently. Remember what I told you yesterday. Observe first, act second." Kale nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. The previous day's climb had been a lesson in patience and ingenuity, and he had learned to adapt quickly. Today, he would face a new challenge, one that could not be overcome by gadgets alone. As he moved forward, he entered a section of the tower that seemed almost alive. The crystal walls pulsed with energy, shifting in color and pattern with a rhythm that was both beautiful and dangerous. The wind howled through narrow channels, creating sudden blasts that threatened to unbalance him. Kale paused, studying the movement of the crystals. He realized that if he could match his steps with the rhythm, he could ride the energy currents rather than fight against them. It took hours to master the timing. He moved slowly at first, placing his hands and feet carefully, feeling the energy pulse beneath his touch. The Skyspire tested him constantly, sending gusts of wind, flashes of light, and sudden vibrations that forced him to adjust. Yet with each step, he gained confidence. He began to anticipate the shifts, moving in harmony with the tower instead of against it. Princess Arinya's voice guided him gently. "You are seeing the patterns, now trust yourself. Humans are small and fragile, but your mind is powerful. You can turn weakness into advantage." Kale smiled faintly. Her words reminded him of everything humanity had survived. On Earth, humans had lived in environments harsher than this tower. They had adapted, built, and created solutions where no one expected them to. The Skyspire might be alien and strange, but the principles were the same. Observation, patience, and cleverness could overcome almost any obstacle. He reached a ledge that jutted outward, a place where the energy pulses were the strongest. The crystal surface shimmered violently, almost threatening to push him off. Kale took a deep breath and focused. He remembered how birds used the wind to glide, how fish used currents to move effortlessly through water. Slowly, he shifted his weight, letting the energy push him upward rather than resist him. It was risky, but it worked. He felt a surge of triumph as he landed safely on the next platform. The alien observers below murmured in disbelief. A human surviving such forces was unimaginable. Some began to take notes, watching Kale as if he were a new species entirely. Princess Arinya, however, was focused on his strategy rather than his survival. "He is not just climbing," she said to herself. "He is learning." That is the true strength of humanity. As Kale continued, he encountered another challenge, a vast vertical wall of crystal that rose higher than he could see. It was smooth and reflective, with energy pulses that surged unpredictably. No alien could have climbed it without support, and even machines risked malfunctioning under the intense conditions. Kale studied the wall carefully. He noticed subtle imperfections, tiny ridges and grooves that could serve as footholds. The pulses of energy seemed to flow along certain paths, creating invisible channels that could be used to push himself upward. He began a careful ascent, placing each hand and foot with precision. The wall tested him constantly, sending shocks of energy and sudden vibrations, but he adjusted with each movement, learning the flow and using it to his advantage. Hours passed. His arms ached, his legs trembled, and his mind was fatigued, but he refused to stop. Humans had endured far worse. They had crossed deserts, oceans, and mountains that seemed impossible to traverse. If they could survive such challenges, he could survive this climb. At one point, a sudden pulse of energy nearly knocked him off balance. Kale's heart raced, but he remembered Princess Arinya's advice: observe first. He paused, watched the rhythm, and adjusted his movement. Instead of resisting the pulse, he let it carry him slightly to the side, then pushed upward. It was a delicate balance, but it worked. The realization filled him with exhilaration. Every failure was a lesson, and every lesson made him stronger. By midday, Kale reached a small platform nestled within the crystal wall. He rested, breathing heavily, and watched the world below. The alien cities were tiny, their spires dwarfed by the immense Skyspire. The energy currents below shimmered like rivers of light, twisting and turning in patterns that were beautiful yet deadly. Kale realized how small he was in comparison, yet he also felt a surge of pride. Small as he was, he had adapted, overcome, and survived where no one thought possible. Princess Arinya's pod hovered near the ledge. "You are doing well," she said. "But the tower is testing more than your strength. It is testing your mind, your creativity, and your patience. The next section is the hardest yet. Are you ready?" Kale nodded. "I am ready," he replied. He knew that the climb would become even more dangerous, but he also knew that he had the tools, the guidance, and the determination to continue. The next section of the tower was unlike anything he had faced before. The crystal walls narrowed, forming a twisting corridor that spiraled upward. Energy pulses became erratic, and the wind howled through the narrow space. Kale had to move carefully, placing his hands and feet with precision, timing every step to avoid being knocked off balance. He relied on the drones to scan the corridor, marking weak points and guiding his movements. Yet even with the technology, the climb required more than strength. It required intuition, observation, and the ability to think creatively. Kale discovered that by shifting his body in subtle ways, he could use the energy currents to propel himself forward. Each movement was calculated, deliberate, and precise. Hours passed, and the climb became increasingly exhausting. Kale's muscles burned, his lungs ached, and his body begged for rest. Yet he continued, driven by the knowledge that every step brought him closer to the summit and closer to proving humanity's worth. At one point, he encountered a wide chasm within the spiral corridor, a gap too large for him to cross using normal methods. Kale paused, considering his options. He could not leap across, it would be impossible. Instead, he studied the energy currents flowing through the gap. He noticed that the currents formed a subtle arc, like a bridge of invisible light. With careful timing, he jumped, using the energy to carry him across the chasm. It was a moment of perfect coordination, and for a heartbeat, he felt weightless. He landed safely on the other side, his heart pounding with exhilaration. The Skyspire had tested him, and he had found a way to succeed. Princess Arinya's voice came through the communicator. "Excellent! You are learning to move with the tower, not against it. That is the key." Humans survive not because they are strong, but because they can adapt, observe, and find solutions where none exist. Kale smiled, feeling a sense of connection with the princess. Her guidance had been invaluable, yet she had never done the work for him. The climb was his and his alone. That realization filled him with pride and determination. As the day drew to a close, Kale reached another platform, a small ledge that offered a brief respite. He looked up at the summit, which now seemed both distant and tantalizingly close. The climb had become harder with every step, yet he had survived, adapted, and grown stronger. He set up a temporary shelter for the night, a small dome of energy that protected him from the harsher elements. As he rested, he reviewed the challenges he had faced and the solutions he had discovered. Every obstacle had taught him something new, every failure had revealed a path forward. He realized that the Skyspire was not just a test of strength, it was a test of ingenuity, perseverance, and courage. Sleep came fitfully. The energy of the tower seemed to whisper in his mind, its patterns and rhythms dancing behind his eyelids. He dreamed of falling, of being consumed by the energy, yet each time he woke, he felt renewed determination. Humans survived because they faced fear, adapted, and persisted. Kale understood that more clearly than ever. Morning arrived, and Kale resumed his climb with renewed energy. He moved steadily, carefully, and deliberately, observing the patterns of the tower and adjusting his movements. The energy pulses tested him constantly, yet he found ways to use them to his advantage. By midday, he reached a point where the corridor opened into a vast chamber, the walls of which shimmered with a dazzling light. The energy currents here were strong, almost overwhelming, yet Kale approached with confidence. He had learned to read the tower, to anticipate its movements, and to adapt. He moved through the chamber with careful precision, letting the energy guide him rather than resist him. Every step required focus, every movement required calculation, yet he felt exhilaration with every success. The alien observers below could only watch in awe, whispering among themselves. Humans were fragile, yes, but their minds were extraordinary. By the time the sun began to set, Kale had reached the far side of the chamber, a small platform overlooking a dizzying drop. He paused, breathing heavily, and looked up at the summit once more. It seemed closer now, and yet still distant. The climb was far from over, but he had proven something vital, that a human could survive where no one expected, that courage and ingenuity could overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. Princess Arinya's voice came through again. "You are doing what many said was impossible. The summit awaits, and with it, the chance to show the universe that humans are capable of more than anyone imagined. Rest now. Tomorrow, the climb continues." Kale closed his eyes briefly, feeling the thrill of progress and the weight of the journey ahead. He had overcome obstacles, discovered solutions, and survived where no one believed he could. The Skyspire was vast, but human potential was vast too. With determination, creativity, and courage, Kale knew he could continue upward. The summit awaited, and with it, the chance to prove that a single human could stand where no one thought possible. The early light of dawn painted the skyscraper in shades of gold and silver. Kale adjusted his harness and looked upward. The summit, once a distant glimmer, now seemed to pulse like a living star, calling him onward. Each step he had taken brought him closer, yet the higher he climbed, the more unpredictable the tower became. The energy pulses were stronger here, and the wind howled through narrow channels with a force that threatened to throw him off balance. Princess Arinya hovered nearby in her pod, studying him carefully. "This next section is different," she said. "It is not only a test of strength or skill, it is a test of your mind. The Skyspire will challenge you in ways you cannot yet imagine. You must adapt, observe, and move with it, not against it." Kale nodded. He had learned the truth of her words already. The first climbs had taught him patience, observation, and ingenuity. Now he would need all those skills, and more. As he entered the next section, the tower narrowed into a twisting column of crystal that seemed almost alive. The walls shifted subtly, their surfaces reflecting light in dazzling, unpredictable patterns. Energy pulses raced along the column, sometimes surging violently, sometimes fading to almost nothing. Kale could feel the vibrations beneath his feet, hear the faint hum in the air. Every sense was alert, every movement mattered. He paused, studying the patterns. The pulses were chaotic but not random. There was a rhythm, a hidden logic in the chaos. Slowly he began to move, timing each step to match the pulses. He found that by leaning slightly into the current, he could ride the energy upward rather than fight it. Each movement was deliberate, a careful negotiation with the forces around him. The climb was exhausting. Hours passed as Kale navigated the twisting column, his muscles straining, his mind alert, and his body trembling from effort. Yet he did not stop. Humans had survived far greater challenges. They had crossed deserts, oceans, and mountains that seemed impossible. Adaptation, courage, and determination had always carried them forward. Kale drew strength from that knowledge. Princess Arinya's voice came through the communicator. "You are moving with the tower, not against it. That is exactly what is needed. Trust your instincts. Observe the currents and let them guide you." Kale took a deep breath and focused on the next challenge. A sudden burst of energy surged along the column, pushing him backward. He instinctively adjusted his weight, letting the current carry him slightly sideways, then pushed upward again. The energy pulses continued, testing him constantly, yet each adjustment he made allowed him to progress. As he climbed higher, the column narrowed even further. The walls were smooth and reflective, offering no obvious footholds. The energy pulses grew stronger, sometimes violent enough to knock him off balance if he miscalculated. Kale paused, studying the movements carefully. Then slowly he began to climb, placing his hands and feet in perfect coordination with the pulses. Every step required focus, every adjustment had to be precise. Hours turned into the afternoon, and fatigue began to weigh on him. His arms ached, his legs trembled, and his mind felt heavy. Yet he pressed forward. He reminded himself that humans thrived where others failed, not through brute strength, but through ingenuity, observation, and adaptability. Each movement was a solution to a problem the tower presented. Each small success was proof that he could continue. Suddenly, a section of the column opened into a vast chamber. The walls pulsed with bright, shifting light, and the air vibrated with energy. The chamber was wider than any section he had encountered, yet the currents were stronger, more erratic. The challenge was not just to move upward, but to navigate the chaotic environment without being thrown off balance. Kale paused at the entrance, studying the flow of energy. He noticed patterns within the chaos, currents that moved in arcs, gaps in the pulses, subtle changes in color that indicated shifts in intensity. Slowly, he began to move, using the energy to guide him rather than resist him. It was difficult, exhausting, and required every ounce of concentration. Princess Arinya's voice guided him gently. "See the patterns, Kale. Humans survive because they can find order in chaos. You must trust yourself and your instincts. Observe, adapt, and continue." Kale moved through the chamber with painstaking care, timing each step to the rhythm of the pulses. He discovered that by leaning slightly and adjusting the angle of his harness, he could ride the currents like a river, letting them carry him forward while conserving energy. Each movement was deliberate, each adjustment calculated. The chamber tested him, but he persisted. By late afternoon, he reached a narrow ledge that offered a brief respite. He rested, breathing heavily, and looked upward. The summit was closer now, its light pulsating like a beacon. Yet the final stretch loomed above him, and he knew it would be the most difficult part of the climb. The energy pulses grew stronger, the winds more unpredictable, and the walls narrower. It would require all of his skill, all of his ingenuity, and all of his courage. Kale set up a small temporary shelter for the night, a dome of energy that shielded him from the harsher elements. As he rested, he reviewed the challenges he had faced and the solutions he had discovered. Every obstacle had taught him something new. Every failure had revealed a path forward. The Skyspire was not only a physical challenge, it was a test of mind, spirit, and determination. Sleep was restless. The energy of the tower whispered in his mind, patterns flashing behind his eyelids. He dreamed of falling, of being carried away by the currents, yet each time he woke, he felt renewed determination. Humans had survived far worse. Fear was not a reason to stop. It was a reason to adapt, to think, to persevere. Morning arrived, and Kale resumed his climb with renewed energy. The next section was narrower than any before, a twisting column that seemed almost impossibly thin. The walls shimmered with energy, pulsing in chaotic patterns. The winds howled through the gaps, threatening to push him off balance. Every step was a challenge, yet Kale moved with careful precision, adjusting to the rhythm of the tower. Hours passed. He moved steadily, slowly, deliberately, each step bringing him closer to the summit. Fatigue weighed heavily, yet he pressed onward. The Skyspire continued to test him, but he had learned its patterns, its rhythms, and its logic. He had adapted, and adaptation was the human strength. At one point, Kale encountered a wide chasm within the twisting column. The gap seemed impossible to cross. He paused, studying the currents, and noticed subtle flows of energy that formed a bridge of invisible support. Carefully, he timed his jump, letting the currents carry him across. For a heartbeat, he felt weightless, suspended between the past and the future. He landed safely on the other side, his heart racing with exhilaration. Princess Arinya's voice came through the communicator. "Excellent, you are moving not just with the tower, but through it. That is the human way, finding solutions where none seem to exist. You are doing what no one believed possible." Kale smiled faintly. Her encouragement was steady, supportive, but never intrusive. The climb was his and his alone. That realization gave him strength. He knew that the final challenge awaited above, the summit. But he also knew he could reach it if he continued to observe, adapt, and persevere. The sun began to set as Kale approached the final vertical stretch before the summit. The walls shimmered like molten crystal, the energy pulses stronger than ever. The wind howled through narrow channels, threatening to throw him off balance at every step. He paused, breathing deeply, and studied the patterns. The final stretch was not just physical, it was mental. Kale realized that the tower demanded creativity as much as strength. He adjusted his harness, repositioned the drones, and began to move in a rhythm that matched the pulses of energy. Each step was deliberate, each movement calculated. He used the currents to propel himself upward, leaning, twisting, and stretching to maintain balance. Hours passed. Fatigue pressed against him, his muscles ached, and his mind raced with calculation. Yet he continued. Every step was progress, every adjustment a solution. He had learned to move not just with the tower, but through it. At last, as the night sky stretched above him, Kale reached a narrow ledge near the summit. He paused, looking upward. The summit glowed like a star, radiant and almost alive. He could feel the energy pulsing around him, a rhythm that seemed to welcome him forward. Princess Arinya's voice came through once more. "You have done what no one believed possible. The final steps are yours alone. Trust yourself. Humans survive where others fail because you can adapt, observe, and persevere. You are ready." Kale took a deep breath, feeling the culmination of all his effort, courage, and ingenuity. The summit was close, yet it required one last act of precision, one final negotiation with the energy of the Skyspire. He focused, timed his movements with the rhythm of the currents, and began the final ascent. Each step brought him closer, each movement more deliberate than the last. The energy pulsed around him, guiding him, challenging him, and finally supporting him. He stretched upward, feeling the culmination of his journey. Finally, he reached the summit. The light of the tower bathed him, and for a moment he stood in awe. The energy of the Skyspire seemed to acknowledge him, shimmering around him in celebration. He had done it. A single human had reached a place no one thought possible. Princess Arinya hovered nearby, her eyes shining with pride and wonder. "You have shown the universe the strength of humanity," she said softly. "Not in physical power, but in courage, ingenuity, and determination. You have made the impossible possible." Kale stood at the summit, exhausted but triumphant. He looked out at the world below, at the cities and towers that seemed so small from this height. He had survived, adapted, and succeeded where no one believed a human could. He had proven that even the smallest, seemingly weakest beings could achieve greatness through courage and ingenuity. And as he gazed at the glowing horizon, he knew that this was only the beginning. Humans had potential far beyond what anyone imagined, and he had just shown the first glimpse of what they could achieve. The summit of the skyscraper glowed with a light so bright it seemed to pull Kale forward. The tower's energy pulses thrummed beneath his feet like a heartbeat, resonating with every movement he made. The climb had tested every skill, every ounce of determination, and every bit of ingenuity Kale possessed. Yet here he was, at the final stretch, standing on a narrow ledge that overlooked the vast expanse of the alien world below. The air shimmered with radiant currents, and the wind carried a low hum, as though the skyscraper itself was aware of the human who dared to challenge it. Princess Arinya hovered in her pod nearby, her expression calm yet filled with pride. "You've come farther than anyone imagined," she said through the communicator. "The summit is within reach. Remember, this is not about physical strength. It's about your mind, your courage, and your ability to adapt. You are ready." Kale nodded, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The climb had been relentless, pushing him beyond what he believed his body and mind could endure. Every step had required focus, creativity, and patience. He had learned the tower's patterns, danced with the energy currents, and turned every obstacle into an opportunity. Now, the final ascent awaited, demanding everything he had left. The narrow ledge gave way to a sheer wall of crystal, smooth and seemingly impossible to scale. The energy pulses here were stronger than ever, thrumming through the air in chaotic rhythms. A single misstep could send him tumbling into the void below. Kale paused, observing the patterns of the pulses, the subtle shifts in light and color, the rhythm of the currents. He took a deep breath, recalling every lesson he had learned along the climb. Humans survived where others failed because they could observe, adapt, and think beyond brute force. He reached out, placing his hands carefully on the crystalline surface. The energy pulsed against his palms, but he leaned into it, letting the current guide him upward. Step by step, he moved, twisting and turning, matching the chaotic rhythm of the tower with precise movements. The climb demanded not only physical coordination but mental agility. Each pulse was a challenge, each gust of wind a test of timing and instinct. As he ascended, Kale felt a surge of confidence. He was no longer merely reacting to the tower. He was moving with it, anticipating its shifts, finding harmony within its chaos. Every adjustment of his body, every shift in weight, every calculated move carried him higher. Fatigue gnawed at his limbs, but he pressed forward, remembering Princess Arinya's words and the promise he had made to prove humanity's potential. Hours passed, and the summit drew nearer. Kale's movements became a fluid dance, each step perfectly synchronized with the energy currents. He discovered hidden ledges, subtle ridges in the crystal, and invisible flows of energy that could carry him upward. The tower was still a formidable opponent, but he had learned its language. He understood it, and he used that understanding to continue his ascent. At one point, the wall widened into a small platform bathed in radiant light. Kale paused, breathing heavily, and looked out at the horizon. The alien world below stretched endlessly, cities and towers twinkling like tiny stars. He felt a moment of triumph, but he knew this was only a brief respite. The summit lay just above him, still out of reach, and the final section of the climb would test him like never before. Princess Arinya's voice guided him again. "You've learned to move with the tower, not against it. Now you must use that skill to complete the final ascent. Observe, adapt, and trust yourself. Humans have accomplished the impossible before, and you will do so now." Kale took a deep breath and began the final stretch. The wall narrowed again, forcing him to move with extreme precision. The energy pulses here were unpredictable, sometimes surging violently, sometimes fading to almost nothing. He studied the rhythm carefully, timing each movement to avoid being thrown off balance. Every step was calculated, deliberate, and essential. As he climbed, Kale reflected on the journey. Every challenge had taught him something new: the importance of patience, the value of observation, the power of creativity, and the strength of persistence. Humans were small and fragile, yet they possessed something greater than mere physical ability: the ability to think, to adapt, and to overcome. That knowledge gave him courage, even as his body trembled from exhaustion. The final stretch narrowed to a sheer vertical climb with no apparent footholds. The energy pulses throbbed violently, and the wind whipped around him, threatening to push him off the crystal face. Kale paused, closing his eyes briefly to focus. He felt the tower's rhythm in his hands and feet, sensing the subtle flows of energy. Slowly, he began to move, letting the currents lift him just enough to reach small ridges, twisting and turning to maintain balance. Each movement was precise, deliberate, and harmonized with the tower. Minutes turned into hours. Kale's muscles ached, and his lungs burned, but he refused to give up. Humans had survived challenges far greater than this. They had crossed deserts, oceans, and mountains that seemed impossible. Adaptation, courage, and ingenuity had always carried them forward. He drew strength from that knowledge, moving steadily, carefully, and deliberately. Finally, he reached the last ledge before the summit. The light of the sky-spire here was blinding, radiating in colors that shifted and shimmered like liquid. The energy pulses hummed with intensity, but Kale was ready. He observed the currents, calculated his next moves, and prepared for the final climb. Every lesson, every adjustment, every step had led to this moment. Princess Arinya's voice came through softly, filled with awe and pride. "This is it, Kale, the final steps. Trust yourself. You have done what no one believed possible." A single human can stand where others cannot, not because of strength, but because of courage, intelligence, and determination. "You are ready." Kale nodded, feeling a surge of determination. He extended his hands, feeling the pulsing energy beneath his palms. He timed his movements carefully, twisting and turning, letting the currents carry him upward. The climb was delicate, demanding perfect balance and precision. Yet he moved with confidence, each step bringing him closer to the summit. The summit itself seemed almost alive, glowing with a brilliant light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Kale reached out, feeling the energy resonate through his body. He moved carefully, aligning himself with the rhythm, and took the final steps. For a brief moment he felt weightless, suspended between the tower and the sky. Then, with a final push, he stood atop the sky-spire. The light of the summit bathed him, and the energy of the tower seemed to celebrate his achievement. He had done it. A single human had reached a place no one believed possible. He stood tall, exhausted, but triumphant, feeling the power and beauty of the tower beneath his feet. Princess Arinya hovered nearby, her eyes shining with pride. "You have shown the universe the strength of humanity," she said softly. "Not in physical power, but in courage, intelligence, and determination. You have made the impossible possible." Kale looked out over the alien world below. Cities and towers shimmered like tiny stars, and the landscape stretched endlessly. He had survived, adapted, and succeeded where no one believed a human could. The climb had tested everything, yet he had proven that humans could overcome challenges far greater than their size and strength might suggest. He took a deep breath, feeling the culmination of all his effort, courage, and ingenuity. The summit was not just a place of victory, it was a symbol. It represented the potential of humanity, the ability to thrive where others could not, and the power of determination, creativity, and adaptation. As he gazed at the horizon, Kale realized that the climb had changed him. He had learned to trust his instincts, to think creatively, and to move with purpose. He had faced fear and uncertainty and had emerged victorious. Humans were not weak, they were resilient, clever, and capable of greatness. Princess Arinya watched him silently, a smile of admiration on her face. "You have done more than reach the summit," she said. "You have inspired an entire world to see humans differently. Your courage and ingenuity have shown what is possible." Kale felt a sense of quiet pride. He had faced the impossible and had succeeded. The Skyspire had tested him, pushed him to his limits, and demanded everything he had. Yet through observation, adaptation, and determination, he had overcome. He had proven that humans could stand where no one expected, and in doing so, had earned the respect and wonder of an entire alien world. The sun began to rise, casting long beams of light across the Skyspire and the world below. Kale stood atop the summit, feeling the warmth of the light and the energy of the tower beneath him. He was tired but triumphant. Every step, every adjustment, every challenge had brought him here. And in this moment, he knew that humanity's potential was limitless. Princess Arinya's voice came through one final time. The universe has witnessed what a single human can achieve. Let this be a reminder. It is not strength alone that matters, but courage, intelligence, and the will to persevere. You have made the impossible possible, Kale. Kale smiled, taking in the view, feeling the energy of the skyspear, and knowing that this climb would be remembered for generations. The journey had been difficult, but it had revealed something extraordinary, that humans, though small and fragile, could rise above any challenge through ingenuity, determination, and courage. And as he stood there atop the skyspear, Kale understood the truth that had carried him this far. A single human could indeed stand where no one believed possible, not through force, but through the remarkable power of the human spirit. A single human could not stand, but the princess made it possible,